In the turbulent world of geopolitics, one name that has stood the test of time is Chanakya. A master strategist, economist and philosopher, Chanakya's teachings have guided rulers, military leaders and statesmen for centuries. His wisdom, encapsulated in works like the Arthashastra and chanakyaniti, is still studied and revered today. But what would Chanakya advise a modern-day leader like Russian President Vladimir Putin to tackle the ever-growing expansion of NATO? In this video, I'll break down how Chanakya's age-old strategies could be applied to today's geopolitical landscape. To understand how Chanakya would approach NATO's expansionism, let's first examine the current geopolitical scenario. NATO, originally formed as a defensive alliance in the wake of World War II, has steadily expanded eastward since the end of the Cold War. Former Soviet bloc countries, like the Baltic states, and even nations once part of the USSR like Ukraine and Georgia, have sought NATO membership, much to Russia's dismay. Putin, as the leader of Russia, views NATO's eastward expansion as a direct threat to Russia's security and its influence over former Soviet territories. But how would Chanakya advise him to respond? Chanakya's worldview was shaped by a deep understanding of human nature, power dynamics, and the importance of strategy in statecraft. His strategies, though ancient, are universal and can be applied to many of today's issues. Let's break down some of Chanakya's key principles that would help Putin respond to NATO's expansionist policies. One of Chanakya's famous sayings is, "Attack is the best form of defense." Now, this doesn't necessarily mean a military attack, but taking proactive measures to secure one's position. In the case of NATO's expansion, Chanakya would advise Putin to ensure that Russia is not merely reacting, but taking the initiative. Putin must strengthen Russia's global alliances with other countries that share a similar disdain for NATO's actions. By expanding Russia's influence in other regions, such as the Middle East, Central Asia, and Africa, Putin can not only counterbalance NATO's growth, but also create a sphere of influence that can act as a deterrent. Strengthening ties with countries like China, Iran, and Syria would be a strategic move to shift the power dynamics and create alternatives to NATO's hegemony. Another principle that Chanakya firmly believed in was the concept of alliances. He stated, "The enemy's enemy is your friend." In the current context, NATO is expanding eastward, and Russia sees this as a direct threat to its sovereignty. However, NATO's expansion can also serve as an opportunity for Putin to forge strategic alliances with nations that view NATO's encroachment as a threat. Countries like China, Iran, and even some countries in the global south, which view NATO's actions as imperialistic, can become valuable allies in resisting NATO's expansion. By focusing on strengthening relationships with these nations, Putin can gain leverage and create a multipolar world order that challenges the Western-led NATO alliance. This would echo Chanakya's philosophy of divide and rule, where you exploit divisions within your adversaries. Chanakya was also a proponent of using diplomacy and, when necessary, deception in statecraft. In the case of NATO, Putin could engage in diplomatic negotiations, positioning Russia as a reasonable power seeking to preserve peace and stability, all while simultaneously working behind the scenes to build military and strategic capabilities. Putin might engage in covert actions to destabilize NATO's unity, leveraging internal dissent within the alliance. Countries like Turkey, Hungary, and even some smaller European states have expressed concerns about NATO's military interventions. By capitalizing on such rifts, Putin could weaken NATO's cohesion, just as Chanakya would advise a ruler to sow discord among enemy factions. Diplomacy, mixed with a hint of deception, can be a potent tool. Russia could offer peace initiatives while simultaneously preparing for a stronger defense. Chanakya's emphasis on intelligence and understanding the enemy is paramount. In the case of NATO, Putin must understand the long-term goals of the alliance. NATO's expansion is not just about territorial gains, it's also about consolidating military power and limiting Russian influence. To counter this, Russia needs to invest heavily in intelligence operations, both covert and overt. Understanding NATO's strategies, vulnerabilities, and potential cracks will allow Putin to anticipate moves and counter them before they materialize. At the heart of Chanakya's philosophy is the idea that a state must always be prepared to defend itself. Chanakya believed that a wise ruler always maintains a strong defense, and that rings true today. Putin's strategy would likely involve strengthening Russia's military infrastructure and capabilities. From modernizing the Russian military to increasing its presence in strategic regions like Ukraine, Belarus, and the Arctic, Russia must show its readiness to defend itself against NATO's growing influence. Moreover, technological advancements in cybersecurity hybrid warfare, and asymmetric tactics could be employed to counter NATO's conventional military strength. Finally, one of Chanakya's most important teachings is knowing when to retreat. He who knows when to fight and when to retreat knows the true art of warfare, Chanakya said. Putin must not act impulsively. If NATO's expansion reaches a point where confrontation is unavoidable, diplomacy should still be the first choice. However, if the situation escalates, a tactical retreat may be necessary to regroup and reassess. Putin could consider delaying direct conflict while strengthening Russia's position globally, using the opportunity to build a more formidable alliance and a better defense posture. In conclusion, Chanakya's timeless wisdom provides a comprehensive strategy for dealing with NATO's expansionist policies. By forging new alliances, using diplomacy and deception, strengthening defenses, and knowing when to retreat, Putin could ensure that Russia remains a formidable power on the global stage. Chanakya's advice isn't just for rulers of the past. It's a blueprint that can be applied to today's political and military realities. As the world watches the ongoing power struggle between Russia and NATO, Chanakya's teachings remain as relevant as ever. What do you think of Chanakya's strategies for Putin? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth analyses of geopolitics and strategy. Thanks for watching, and remember, in the world of geopolitics, as Chanakya once said, the world's biggest power is not in weapons, but in strategy.